Greetings, everyone, from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. My name is Lisa Broom, and I'm a professor here at the University of North Carolina School of Law. I also have the privilege of heading up the Director Diversity Initiative, and I wanted to speak with you a little bit about, since we may have some newcomers here, about some of the things that the DDI does. Number one, we maintain a database that we would invite those who are not already members of to put themselves in. Jennifer is going to put the link to our website in the chat, and from that website, you can navigate to our database. There are over 1,000 people in our database. Last year, we provided names for 57 board seat searches and supplied back to companies free of charge resumes that were in our database. We've done 23 searches so far this year. We've had over a dozen successes that we've learned about this year, and probably more that we are yet to find out about. So this is free to you and free to companies which take advantage of it. So number one, the database. And number two, more programs like this, and you can see the menu of our other programs from our database, and Jennifer will tell you more about them at the end of the program. Also, our database contains lots of resources for those who are just getting started in this board journey, and there are many free things that we link to on our website that we would point out to you. So, as we get started in today's program, I would welcome you to network in the chat and share your LinkedIn or other URLs with the other attendees, and maybe do that towards the beginning of the program. And then once all that activity gets done, we would encourage you to post questions that you might have as we go through the substance of the program, so that we can address those questions as we go along or at the end of the session. For this session on leveraging your online presence, part of our Crafting Your Board Journey series, we welcome back Suzanne Maglucci, NACD Certified Board Director, former CEO and board member of a publicly traded company, president of Onboard NC, and a board readiness coach. Suzanne will serve as today's moderator. Returning today to speak again with the DDI audience is Anouk Pappers, one of our most popular panelists, and Anouk will be speaking to us about best practices on building and managing your online presence. We also will be hearing from Corporate Board Director Leilani Latimer. Leilani has an impressive online presence, and she'll be speaking with us about why she has invested in this presence and how it assists her with her personal brand. Today's session is third in this year-long session, Crafting Your Board Journey, designed to walk you through the process of packaging your brand for board work. We will follow today's session on August 27th with a webinar on navigating resources and optimizing your networking efforts. Our next session in the series after that will be in October, when we'll talk about how to ace the board interview. And our December program will be one of the annual highlights for me, which is how I got my first board seat, where we'll hear stories from some new first-time directors. So be sure to check out all of our programs for more details, and you'll hear more about them at the end of today's session. I want to thank Jennifer De La Rosa for her assistance today and every day in doing our DDI stuff, and also ask you, again, if you have questions throughout the session, wait until people are done with the networking so we can get that out of the way and then see your questions later as we go along. So now I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne to get us started.
Thank you, Lisa and Jennifer, for hosting today's session on leveraging your online presence. More than ever before, it's critical that you have a strong online presence designed to position you as a potential board director. Recruiters and corporations leverage these online resources to consider your candidacy. Without it, or worse yet, with an online presence that doesn't properly represent your brand, you may be eliminated from consideration long before you have a chance to even interview with that organization. Today, we'll learn what's expected in your online presence, how to maintain and refresh that presence, and we'll end the session with a discussion with a board director who I think has mastered the art of using their online presence to support their board candidacy. We'll start today's discussion with a chat with Anouk Pappers. Anouk is a brand anthropologist, an author, and a public speaker. She helps individuals with their personal brands, and relevant to this discussion, she and her firm Signet support aspiring and sitting board directors in developing their online brand. When we reach the end of this program, we'll provide information on how you can connect directly with Anouk if you would like to. In fact, she has very generously offered to share a special offer with people in today's program. So please be sure to stick with us to the end of the program so that you can learn a little bit about that. Anouk, it's always a pleasure having you with us. I'll turn it over to you for a discussion on the key elements of a strong online presence.
Okay, thank you very much, Suzanne, for this introduction, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's not only that we need to have an online presence, it really has become a critical element and the first phase, let's say, or first selection phase when we're looking for that board seat. And funny, when we were discussing or preparing this session last week, we were discussing priorities. So should I have first my resume and my board bio ready, or should I first focus on my online presence? And we all, not just me, but we all agreed that it has to be your online presence, because nobody's going to ask for your board resume or your bio if you don't have an online presence that's up to speed. So having said that, I'm going to start sharing my screen, my slides. And remember that this session is all about you. It's about explaining and talking about how you can use or build a strong online brand, personal brand, personal brand, and use your online presence to achieve that next professional goal. And in our case here, it's all to land that board seat. Because what we do is we work with women and diverse leaders and we support them to achieve their next goals. So again, finding that board seat. How do we do that? Well, we focus on doing three things. We help you define or redefine your personal brand. What is it that I bring to the table? What makes me stand out from the other similar board candidates? What is my value proposition? What are my unique benefit points? What's my positioning statement? And also, what are my communication topics? So that's really important, because we just need to have our brand ready, but we also need to articulate it into content. Because you can say, like me, I'm a brand anthropologist, but if I do not create any content to prove it, it's just a word. It doesn't really mean anything. So we need to articulate our brand into content. And thirdly, we need to build that online presence. We need to use Google as our wingman or our wingwoman. And the reason why we focus so much on your online presence, while also when we work on your brand, you will see that your, let's say, your offline presence or your executive presence in general will improve. We really focus very much on your online presence, because whether it's accurate or not, and whether you like it or not, we are, or you are, who Google says you are. And this has become so much more true in the past several years. Your online presence has become that first point of reference for that search firm. So whenever your name starts circling around after you've done your networking, which I believe is the topic of the next session. So once you've mastered the networking, your name will start circling around. And the first thing that search firm will do, they will Google you. And they go beyond LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is just, I mean, it's an important one, but it's only one of the 10 results that we see when we Google you. So having that online presence, understanding what it is and how you can manage it in the best way possible, that's a very important part of being successful on that journey. So as we always do, we have some questions. So we have a small poll that I would like Jennifer to launch. 3 questions. So please, I see we are with 150 people, which is really great. So the more people, let's say, participate in the poll, the more trustworthy the results, of course, bigger sample size. So the first question is, do you Google yourself on a regular basis? So let's say every 3 months you go to Google, you type in your name, and you show you see what shows up. So please, everybody, answer as many as possible. Answer the question, and then after a few seconds or half a minute.
Okay, it looks like everyone's winding down. I'll just give 3 more seconds. So get your answers in. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. We had 136 people respond, so that's pretty good. And can you see the results now?
Yes, I can. 44% is Googling themselves on a regular basis and 56% is not. This is going in the right direction. So as I said, I asked this question for every presentation I do. And several years ago, it was like hardly 20%, and it's kind of growing. And usually it's around a third. But seeing here that it's 44%, that gives me hope. But still, 56% of us is not Googling ourselves on a regular basis. So remember, 44% Googles ourselves, 56% not. So let's go to the second question, which is, do you Google others? So before you meet someone, after you met someone, before you hire someone, do you Google others? So again, please, a simple yes or no would be great. And then we're going to see, of course, the other percentage, or the percentage of this question, and we'll see the difference.
Okay, we've got over 130 people have responded. I'm going to end. 3, 2, 1, end. And there you go. Can you
Okay.
see that?
Yes, I can. So 83% of people Google others and 17 they don't. And maybe the 17 part of that is no, I just look at LinkedIn, but when we talk about Googling others, we mean LinkedIn and everything, looking up people. Anyway, the difference is interesting. So 83% of us, we Google others, but only 44% of us, we Google ourselves. So this means that there's a large group of us, more than half, who don't Google themselves on a regular basis, but most of us are looking at us. So taking me as an example, let's say I don't Google myself, but I know everybody here, or most people here, Google me. That's a strange idea because I don't know what I look like, but you all look at me and you base your decisions or your evaluation or your perception of me based on what you see online. And you still may say, you know, I don't really care. But if we look at the third question, then it becomes apparent why this is so important. Because the third question is, did you ever decide not to follow through with a relationship based on what you found or didn't find online? So please again answer the question. And this is where we'll be seeing independent, let's say, of the percentages. But what happens is there are two board candidates. Let's say we have Suzanne and Leilani. They're both looking for a board seat. And Lisa is the executive search firm, search professional looking for a candidate. So she has those two names. And she Googles Leilani and she Googles Suzanne. Leilani has a great online reputation, as we heard before, so it's all there. It's very clear. She's positioned as a board member. Suzanne's, not so much. Suzanne, this is just a hypothetical example. You know this, right? That's why I'm using you. So the question is, who is Lisa going to talk to first? Leilani, who's presented in a really great way, and Suzanne, not so much. I think it's Leilani. And if Lisa has a conversation with Leilani and she lives up to the expectations she created online, Suzanne may never get that phone call. This is the reality we live in today. So you may say, I don't care, which is fine, but this is what's happening. So you are having increased opportunities if you do have that online presence, because you'll stand out between the other candidates for that board seat. And we're seeing here, and this is the highest ever, and because we have a big sample size, that's interesting, 75% of people here decided once or more often not to follow through with a relationship based on what you found or didn't find online. Let's remember this, and especially the people who are not Googling themselves on a regular basis. We are missing out on opportunities simply because of the fact that we're not aware, or we're not conscious, or we're not acting, doing, let's say, anything proactively to make sure that we have that strong online presence. So let's say that we agree that this is important. There's one big critical mistake that I want to share that senior executives still make a lot when it comes to their online presence. And that is that we do not focus on the future. Whenever you think about your LinkedIn, your bio, your resume, and many of the conversations that we have, we tend to talk about the past, where we lived, where we worked, where we studied, what we've done, which may be very impressive, but it's a fact, it's in the past, there's nothing we can do about it, and there's actually no real conversation. So what we should do, we should shift gears toward the future and really start talking about, okay, this is the value that I want to add. This is where I want to go. This is how I think our industry will evolve going forward. Talking about the future gives the other people the opportunity to say, wait a minute, if this is what you're looking for, I can help you, or I can connect you, or this is an opportunity that I see for you. So let's please agree that from today on, 2 things. We're going to Google ourselves every 3 months. Just put it in your calendar. First, on the 1st of June already left, June 5th, and 3 months ahead of time, Google yourself, see what comes up. Even if you decide to do nothing, that's fine, but at least you'll be aware of what you look like online. The second assignment, let's say, is whenever you have conversations or when you present yourself, start focusing on the future. I know it may be a bit scary or a bit overwhelming, or I don't know what to say, but that's what you're going to have to work on. Talking about the past is very easy because it's what you have done, but let's forget about that and let's use what you've done in the past, but make that into a future-proof story, because that's how you're going to get to that next level. So going to the roadmap. Yes. Going to the roadmap. So what we developed is a roadmap with 6 milestones, which take you through from the beginning, from the online assessment to staying current and relevant. And I'm going to talk us through the different steps. We also just published a very thin, a roadmap, a little booklet that takes you through those steps as well. So if you're interested in it, I think it's on Amazon, but it's the roadmap, let's say in a story, told in a story. So we start with the online assessment, and that's what I said. So what we'll be doing every 3 months going forward. So when you go and when you Google yourself, what should you look at? Look at the first 10 results. And for every result that you see showing up, answer the question, is this me? Is this relevant, or is it some kind of a database or some sort of profile that I'm mentioning, or a Crunchbase or whatever it is? Is it current, or is this 2019 or older? And lastly, and most importantly, will this help me achieve my next professional goal? Is this positioning me as a board member? Or is this talking about how I was selected to my previous job? Or is it just, again, my Facebook, my Instagram, which has nothing to do with who I am professionally? So make sure that you answer these questions, so you'll get that idea, not like, okay, yeah, I see my online presence, but dive in, spend a little bit of time on evaluating how you're being positioned. And also ask yourself the question, if I'm looking for a board member, would I be interested in this person? So would I be interested in me? Also, when you look at your online presence, it's not just all results, but you should also look at your images and your video. As we all know, video has become so much more important in the past few years. Boards especially want to see how you speak, how you come across, how you behave, so they get a better understanding of who you are before they decide to meet with you. Pictures as well. We all have our LinkedIn profile picture, but we need more than that, because that profile picture, even though here in this case, it's a perfect picture, great. But if we see this image, same person, sitting on stage in a panel, Deloitte, Salesforce, who are behind it, people are listening to her, you get a very different feel of the person. She must be in the know. She looks like a thought leader. Again, this is great, but this tells a story. So make sure that whenever you have the opportunity, when you're speaking, when you're at a conference, and I'm not talking about, hey, I'm at a conference, but make sure you take some pictures of yourself when you're in conversation, or when you're doing something, more action pictures. Even if, let's say, when you're volunteering and you're running a marathon or a 10-mile volunteering run, that adds something to your brand. So let's make sure we do not just have those profile pictures, but really something else that tells more of a story about us. Then we go to the second step on the roadmap, which is the personal branding. And personal branding is a huge topic, and for some people it's like really overwhelming. We try to really make it accessible, and let's say easy. Our methodology consists of really building your brand based on the 6 dimensions that are mentioned here. Your next goal is very important to have that clear. Here for all of us, it's finding a board seat. However, what kind of a board seat, in what kind of an industry, so the more we can narrow that down, the better. Thinking about your target audience and defining who your target audience is very important, because that will help you define the tone of voice when you will be creating content. Because for every piece of content that you'll create, you have to think about, is this going to help me achieve my next goal? And is this relevant for my target audience? So if your target audience is interested in, let's say in cybersecurity, because you're going for that board seat, cybersecurity, you say, hey, I'm really a specialist in cybersecurity, but I also like, I don't know, sustainability. If that board is not at all interested in that, or boards, let's say in general, or the topic this year is not at all anymore sustainability, then maybe refrain from creating content around that. So make sure that you always stick to your topics. So make sure it aligns with your brand, but also make sure that it's relevant for your target audiences. Talk about your unique benefit points. Again, what do I bring to the table that others don't? Apart from my hard skills, apart from my 25 years of global experience, etc., what do I bring? What is my leadership skill? What kind of a leader am I? Am I a patient person? Am I a collaborator? Do I make sure that everything gets aligned, etc.? So make sure that you define those and have those clear, because when you go into an interview, you can use some of those unique benefit points. So let's say you come up with a list of 6. And you're going for a board interview, you know the company, the kind of board seat, etc. I say, okay, I'm going to use these 2 or 3 benefit points, and that's it. Not all of them. I pick 2 or 3 that make most sense for this board seat, and those are the ones I'm going to lead my conversation with. So this will help you be very concise in what it is that you want to convey. So instead of saying, hey, this is my whole story, no, you don't have to tell your whole story. Pick the 2 or 3 things that make most sense and most aligned with that seat and start your conversation there. Key differentiators, positioning statement, that's what we really use, let's say, to the outside world. So when you're creating your content, when you're presenting yourself, use your positioning statement. So I'm Anouk, I'm a brand anthropologist, instead of using my job title. Also, brand anthropologist is much easier to remember. It's much more memorable than being a CEO or being an SVP or being a board member. So make sure that you create that positioning statement that works for you, and use that in your communication. Interesting example, we work with a lot of people. Some people have really, really common names. And I say, okay, but how do I do this when I have a common name? How do I differentiate myself? So we usually say, well, see if you have a middle name or a middle initial. So one of our clients, his name is Kevin Hart, and he's not the actor. But he came to us, he said, I want to work with you guys on my brand, but let's forget about my online presence, because, you know, he's there. So we said, okay, well, let's work on your brand and we'll see. So he has a middle initial, which is the letter L. So we started communicating and creating his content and pushing it out, Kevin L. Hart. So now today, when you Google Kevin L. Hart, you'll find our Kevin. You'll still find the other Kevin as well, but his LinkedIn, his Signet branding page, and some of the articles we published for him, they show up. So it's not 100% guarantee, but you can use your middle name, your middle initial, or add a positioning statement. So if your name, let's say, is still too generic, add a positioning statement that you like. So in my case, I would be Anouk Pappers, brand anthropologist. And because I communicate everywhere that I'm a brand anthropologist, my audience is smart enough that when they Google me and they don't find me, they know to add my positioning statement to it, and then it will be all me. As a side note, when we talk about Googling and your online presence. Communication subjects, I'll dive into that in more detail, but these are the elements that we use to build your brand. And here are some of your peers, some of your DDI peers with whom we work and with whom we develop their positioning statement, their personal brands, which again gives us that idea. You're not your job title, you're something on a higher level. And this is also something we were discussing last week. How do I use my online presence if I'm still in a job, but also looking for a board seat? How do I combine, let's say, those brands, if you like, or those personas? Well, what we do is we elevate you away from what you do, but really we elevate you to a level of who you are. So, for example, Chantal Kuba, she's an authentic voice for change. So whether she's looking for a board seat or whether she's in a role, it doesn't matter because that is who she are. Nora is a promoter of financial integrity. Again, it doesn't matter. We're not talking about a job level. When you're then creating content, make sure you create the content on the highest level. So when you're looking for a board seat, make sure you start creating content on that level. So don't use managing people, leading transformation, but start using the words like guiding and overseeing, etc. So you use the board language, but also make sure that you create the content, your subject matter expertise, your thought leadership toward that board seat. Because when you're still in a job, let's say you're in a job, you're fine there. And your brand and your online presence should focus on the future. So I'm not necessarily talking about my job, but I'm talking about where I want to go next. Even if I don't want to lose my job or don't want to get rid of my job, still your communication is about your next vision, your next role. Third milestone, LinkedIn. Briefly on LinkedIn, the visual elements on LinkedIn really make a very big difference when you go into your LinkedIn and you have that first impression. So if you see this LinkedIn profile here from Deb, if you think about, okay, think away or get rid of the featured section and don't have that background image. That's how still most of our LinkedIn profiles look like. So the background is just that gray thingy and gray background, and there is no featured section. That's boring, and it doesn't really say anything about me. And actually, it sends out a message that you don't care. So whatever you do, make sure that you use a background image. This can be, if you live in New York, then you're lucky because you can use the New York skyline. If you live in a small village, it's a different kind of story. But see if you can at least use that skyline, use something that adds to your brand. Again, if you're running a 10-mile, if you're doing a 10-mile run to support your local charity, use a picture of this. It's better than nothing, but it also, again, it tells a story about who you are and what you care about outside of your job. So find something that you feel comfortable with. Find something that adds something to your personal brand. Here, Deb uses the background of her own company. So making sure that you use something instead of nothing is better, but think about it and see or realize that this is a space where you can actually really make a difference and a good first impression. Of course, you need to use a good profile picture, so not one that is too pixelated, not too much zoomed in, definitely not your kids or your dogs, but use something that is good. And also sometimes people say, should I wear, mostly men, should I wear a suit or not? Use that picture, or let's say show yourself on that picture as how you would be in a meeting. So if that's with a suit, then it's a suit. And if it's not a suit, it's not a suit. I had a good example of somebody who is in the C-suite, but is ready for a CEO role. And he said, but my team doesn't see me as a CEO. And so we talked. And then one of the things that we saw was on his LinkedIn profile picture, he was wearing a very casual sweater. I said, maybe that's too casual. So think about the things, how you want to be perceived. If you want to be perceived as very casual, fine. But if that means that your executive presence suffers from it, so really look at all these elements, because again, that impression that you give, it's very strong, and people define or decide who you are or what you are based on what they're seeing. So don't underestimate the power of it. Your headline, use this to add your positioning statement. And again, not just your job title, not just board member, but add that idea creator or whatever that positioning statement is that fits with you. Your about on LinkedIn, a great place to tell your story. Don't make this into a summary of your resume because it's easy. but use this to tell your story. Again, future focused. What is it? Where do you see that you can add value? What is it that what are you passionate about? Make that story into something so that people say, oh, wow, I really want to meet Jennifer. She has a great story. She's very interesting. That's what we want to get across. And then the last one here is use your featured section. So this is where you can add content that you create about yourself or that you have created, or interviews you were in, a panel that you were in, but use this to share that content. One more thing about LinkedIn, the experiences section. Depending on where you are in your board journey, take a look at your experiences section and again, look critically. Make sure that you do not overload on experiences. So if you are currently in 5, 6, 7, 8 roles, people may think, Uma, she's really too busy. She cannot take on another board seat or whatever. So make sure that you keep that concise. If you're still in a job and you do advisory, it's too much. People think she's too busy. So that's an important one. Also, when you look at your LinkedIn experiences, see what you've done before 2000 and see if you really need to put that up there, or you say, okay, I just delete everything before 2000 because it's kind of like it's outdating me a little bit. And usually it's not that relevant for your next goal, for landing that board seat. If, for example, you worked at, let's say, American Express before 2000 and after 2000, you only worked, let's say, maybe for yourself or in small companies, then it might make sense to leave something like that. But in general, everything before 2000, we don't need to have on your LinkedIn. For your job descriptions, for your jobs, make short descriptions so people understand your role, your achievements, your responsibility. And if you worked for a company that is not well known, think about adding maybe one sentence to explain what the company actually does, because not everybody knows all the companies. And the last one, as long as you don't have a for-profit board, but you do have volunteer board experience or non-for-profit board experience, you can add that to your current experience section so that people see that you have that board experience. Because if it's at your volunteer, then it's like way down on your LinkedIn and maybe people don't go there. So for the time being, you can put that up there. The moment you have a for-profit, you can move it back to your volunteer section. So it's just to give people that idea. You need to understand, you need to use your LinkedIn and make it easy for people to understand fast and simple what it is that you bring to the table. So put up higher, let's say, what's really relevant for your target audience to see. Next one is content creation, and I'm going to speed up a little bit, I think. What are the obstacles for not creating content? And there are several here, and this one is probably the most important one, which is something that especially women and diverse leaders have or see. It's like, I really don't want to talk about myself. I wasn't socialized like this. The way to get over this is to not think about, this is not about me. This is about sharing my vision, my opinion, to make it easier for you to understand what I bring to the table. So if we think about it, it's about helping, especially for women, the word helping really resonates. I'm going to help the people understand who I am. And by creating those content or by creating those articles, I can share my vision in an easily accessible way. So it becomes easy for people. So again, helping. This links to self-advocacy, and self-advocacy has been defined in many different ways. And it's very often, it's about just promoting yourself. But I think we should redefine self-advocacy or look at it in a different way, where it's really about creating a win-win situation. Because the moment I'm talking about my vision and sharing my opinion, I'm also reinforcing my team, my company, my board, because we're all talking about the same things, and I'm creating that trust and that followership, which is important for us to be more successful. So again, it's not just about me, it's about, and if I don't talk about myself or what I do, nobody will, probably. The second one is, I don't know my communication topics. What should I be creating content about, and who actually is interested in it? Well, your target audience is, of course. Thinking about these three circles and where they overlap is a great way of finding your communication topics. So think about what your expertise is. What are you really, really good at? What are you passionate about? And what are boards looking for? So thinking about, okay, my expertise is I'm a CHRO. I've been working with as a CHRO for a long time, so talent management, etc. My passion is to help people develop their potential, and boards are looking for board members who help us grow our talent base or maintain our talent base, retain our talent base, further develop, reskill our talent base from where they were using AI, whatever it is, but that's what boards are interested in. So finding that overlap and then talking about the future of the workforce, for example, could be an interesting topic. This is just an example, but thinking about those 3 circles and finding that overlap, that will help you define your communication topics. And remember, you only need 2 of those because you need to be creating content along the same topics because that's something you want to be known for. So in my case, my 2 topics are personal branding and online presence, because I want my target audience to understand when to connect with me. If I talk about another topic every time, everybody's like, yeah, well, she's all over the place. I don't know what she's the expert in. So make sure that you define those topics and come up with different angles to talk about the same topic. But keep those topics, highlight topics, keep them there and keep creating content around it. People are uncomfortable in front of a camera. Luckily, we all have our iPhones nowadays, which makes it very easy to create content, to delete video if you don't like it. Whenever you speak on a panel, make sure that you have that opportunity to be that people make a short video of you, etc. So also to overcome. I'm not a good writer. There are people you can work with, or there's ChatGPT if you know how to use it in the right way. That can really help you create that first draft of content. And of course, I have no time, which is a big one. And that's, of course, something that is true for everybody. But there comes this moment in time or moment in your life that you say, wait a minute, I need to invest time in me. And I think when you're looking for a board and when you want to get to that next level, I think that's the time to do that. Quickly, 3 types of content that we work with or that you can work with as well. We interview our clients to really get a good idea and build a strong foundation of the brand you. So what we did here with Ravila, we interviewed her and we wrote a story about how she sees different situations, how she looks through situations with 4 lenses. So an interview, third-party storytelling, let's say. In the case of Lloyd, another DDI member, what we do for him, we interviewed him first, but now what we're doing on a regular basis is we create what we call lead-ins. So we use an existing piece of content, a Forbes or a Harvard Business Review article, and we write a short article that reflects his vision on the topic. That's another way. And then we have Marianne Bruce, who speaks on different occasions. She gets interviewed, so she has a lot of content, and we repurpose that in the right way for her. So let's say she does a panel. The panel is 1 hour. Not everybody's going to look at a 1 hour recording, but they might look at a 1.5 minute snippet where she's making her best remarks. Then we go to publishing. Important when we publish that we think about a multi-channel strategy. So do not just publish everything on your LinkedIn, because what we saw before, again, LinkedIn is very important. That's where everybody goes, but people also Google you beyond LinkedIn. So make sure that you start using different platforms as well, like Medium or WordPress or YouTube, where you can publish your content. We've created online magazines on these different platforms, which are available to our clients to use. So they're on Medium and WordPress, etc. So it's not just one person for who we publish, but for many. So we use the power of many, which means if we have many articles on the same platform, it all goes up in Google search and helps, let's say, those articles to show up higher level. And of course, we have our Signet dashboard, which is something that we work with our clients with this a personal branding page that really shows all the different elements of your personal brand. Everything is reflected here. Pieces of content we publish for you on the different platforms, they're all aggregated. It shows up when we Google you. You can send it to somebody if they need some more information. And this, we will focus completely on the future. So your bio is focused on the future, the element, the different pieces of content, it's all future focused. So we can forget about your past, but really focus here. Hey, this is me as a board member. Then the last step of the roadmap is to have to stay current and relevant, which actually means wash, rinse, and repeat. Keep creating content on a regular basis. Keep publishing on a regular basis. And regular can be once every 3 months. Once you're, let's say, all good and you're all set, there's no need to be publishing on a very frequent basis, as long as we kind of create a plan and we are consistent, even if it's 4 articles throughout the year, to really support and reinforce your personal brand. And of course, you have to engage, and that's on LinkedIn, engage with your target audience. So when you publish something and when people respond, it's a good moment to engage in that conversation, because that may lead to maybe that board seat. So that's where I want to leave it for now. And Suzanne, back to you.
Thanks, Anouk. Let me hit a couple of questions from chat just for the moment here, and then we'll come back and maybe do more at the end. I've had a couple of people mention that they make sure that their contact information is also in Perplexity. Is that a platform that you're familiar with? And is that something that is, people are Googling and finding people there, and now people are using Perplexity, which I think is an AI-driven solution. What do you know about that platform, and how should we be thinking about it?
That's a great question. I have no idea. I don't know the platform, but I'm very happy to take a look at it, see if one of my team members knows about it, and very happy to get back to it.
That would be great. And then we can publish some information to this group. And if any of you have more information on that, certainly put it in the chat thread. That would be helpful. Anouk, what about this? You put up a great image of this woman on a panel, and it was certainly much more a statement about her brand than her photograph. Should we be more proactive about the imagery we have in LinkedIn? And if LinkedIn is such a frequently used platform by search people and nom and gov chairs, and everyone's looking there at your profile, should we refresh that on a fairly regular basis?
You could. I think the image that I showed of the panel, let's say, that would be a great image to use as your background image on your LinkedIn. I don't know if you need to refresh that one so much, but refresh, let's say, your featured section on a regular basis. So adding new things, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Excellent.
And again, here as well, when you have images and when you have good pictures, make sure to also upload them outside of LinkedIn, because most of the pictures that you upload within LinkedIn, they also stay within LinkedIn.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Anouk. And stick around, because I'm sure we'll have more questions for you at the end. That was a great overview. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
So at this time, what I'd like to do is introduce our second speaker, Leilani Latimer. Leilani is an accomplished global C-suite executive and a board director who comes to us with significant experience in B2B2C, SaaS, and enterprise software companies of all sizes, from startups to pre-IPO and publicly traded firms. She's an NACD certified board director and has served in the corporate boardroom for over 10 years. Welcome, Leilani. Thanks for being with us today. It's a pleasure to have you here. Tell us a little bit more about you, the boards and the committees you serve, the corporate work that you do, and maybe some of the areas that you specialize in.
Sure. Perfect. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to join. And as always, I'm learning along the way. I'm going to start with my operating side. I'm currently exploring CEO opportunities in growth stage technology or tech-enabled service companies. The themes running through my career are strategic growth and innovation. I have 25 years experience scaling companies, products, and programs. And what I would call my superpowers are go-to-market strategy, business transformation, customer centricity, and building diverse cross-functional teams. I also specialize in ESG and led sustainability for a $3 billion technology company for 7 years. On the board side, I joined my first public board about 3 years ago, Black Diamond Group, where I serve on the NomGov committee. And I was so thrilled to be able to help rewrite the NomGov charter to include ESG. I'm also on the advisory board of FutureX, a private Series A technology company in climate tech. In the past, I've served on numerous advisory boards for Silicon Valley startups. I was the president and chair of a local nonprofit, and I served 5 years on the executive committee of a public-private partnership board. And last but not least, as a passionate advocate for getting more women in leadership roles, I advise 2 early-stage female-founded startups, and I'm a limited partner in 3 different funds that invest only in diverse founders, one exclusively investing in female founders. So put my money where my mouth is.
Excellent. Well, let's talk about that online presence of yours because it's pretty extensive. And I think Anouk would give you like 5 stars. In fact, Jennifer, while we're talking with Leilani, could you maybe put her profile in chat here, her LinkedIn profile? That would be great. So
I'm going to add both of those now.
Okay, thank you. So tell me a little bit, Leilani, about how your online presence came about. What's your philosophy on the role of that online presence, especially as a board level leader?
Yeah, I'm probably going to echo a lot of what Anouk said. My philosophy is it's up to us to tell our own story. And I'll quote my friend Joanna Bloor, who says, every decision made about you and your opportunities is made in a room that you are not in. When I heard that the first time, it really got me to thinking about, one, how could I prepare the people who were going to be in that room to talk about me, whether they're friends, sponsors, or mentors? And, what was the story I was telling about myself? So that really prompted me to tell my own story better and then think about, again, how I prepared them. What I would say is I've always had a hard time being put in a box, and I'm sure this resonates with many of you. We're multi-dimensional beings, and I feel like our resume is really, 2 dimensions. And as Anouk said, it talks very much about the past. It doesn't talk about our future potential. So when I started thinking about who I was as a board director versus as an operator, I wanted to show more about how I do things and how I think about things as opposed to what I've done. When I built my website, it was a way for me to showcase, again, how I think about things, how I approach leadership and board service, how I problem solve. And it was also a way for me to gather my writing and video content in a place that was slightly more creative and ample than my LinkedIn profile and resume. So I would say for all of you as your aspiring board members, how can you demonstrate your perspective, how you think about risk? And this for me was a way to go beyond the narrow stories about my skills and accomplishments.
I think that's such an excellent point because too often we are backward looking, right? If someone's reading your resume, it is backward looking. Your online presence gives you that opportunity, as Anouk pointed out to us earlier, to be forward looking. If you truly are passionate about ESG and you don't have necessarily a whole lot of it in your past history, your online presence gives you a chance to talk about how you think about ESG. And I think Anouk called it lead-ins. I mean, you can grab someone else's great content about ESG and have a few comments about what that looks like and what you think of their writing. And now you are also that thought leader layering on top of that other organization. Shows the perspective board that you are doing your homework and you're out there learning. You're a lifelong learner. You've got sort of this voracious appetite to consume information that says a good thing about what you'll be like in the boardroom, but it also gives you that chance to have an opinion. And the way that you force that opinion to your audience, well, that's going to be the same way that you bring your opinion to the boardroom as well. So it's a great way for you to shape your brand. So then I have to ask the question. So throughout ESG, you've talked about it a little bit. How do you go about choosing which topics you talk about? Anouk tells us pick 2, right? How do you approach that? Do you pick topics that are specific to positioning you for the boardroom, or is it simply passionate sort of things that you have on your radar?
So I'm probably breaking Anouk's rule and going beyond 2, but I don't pick the topics with the boardroom in mind, but I do tailor the language and the approach to a C-suite reader. I'm an avid reader and writer. Every day I read PitchBook and Crunchbase, Wall Street Journal, NACD. I mean, I really read what's happening, and I like to use my online presence as a way to share my opinion on topics that I'm seeing where I think others are not necessarily connecting dots, right? I feel like there's a lot more connection happening, and I like to share that perspective. I do address the topics I'm passionate about in a way that will invite others, possibly detractors, to think about things differently. And I frequently use the common sense approach as a way to bridge a divide or find common ground. So an example is on International Women's Day, which I'm tired of celebrating one day a year. I'd like to celebrate it every day. My blog was entitled Common Sense Feminism, A Logical Guide to Inclusive Leadership. And that was meant to call attention, not in a clickbaity type of way, but to call attention to 2 words that could be a turnoff for some people: feminism and inclusion. Mm-hmm. So I like to bridge these topics and try to bring people together. And what I would encourage, folks on the webinar to think about with your online presence is, like Anouk said, you want to establish yourself as a thought leader. So pick topics where you can share your expertise, a best practice. I'll occasionally share a funny fail. But always keep in mind that your online reputation is your brand. So you want to curate it like a brand identity, which means giving it unique voice and personality. I totally agree. Writing and commenting on articles on LinkedIn is another opportunity to lean into topics you're passionate about. And I always like to cite other people and elevate them to broaden the conversation and the readership. And then, specifically for me, I was just going to add, getting back to like what you really want to highlight about yourself. So for me, it's, I bring a unique approach to risk mitigation and value creation. And that's shaped by my global experience, expertise in ESG and cross-center industry expertise. So I'm thinking about those unique value adds every time I'm writing something.
And I think too, when you're using those lead-ins and someone else's third-party content, it also checks that box that Anouk called out, those of us that don't have the time, right? You don't have to be writing a lengthy piece yourself. You can have simply a few comments on someone else's meaningful publication. So I've noticed a lot of sustainability in your topics, Leilani. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that topic. Do you use the term ESG? Do you use the term sustainability? Talk about this topic in particular and how we might think about it. And are Nom and Gov chairs looking for that kind of a topic today?
So I could talk all day about sustainability. It's something I'm very passionate about in the broadest sense of the term, ESG, sustainability. But I want to start in particular to give everyone, something to think about when you get back to your desks after this is, as board directors, you have unique value adds. So whether it's ESG, cybersecurity, AI, human capital management, boards are looking for people who have multiple value adds, not just one. So you're never going to point somebody to a board who is just a cybersecurity expert. They're also going to have other expertise that they're bringing to that. And I like to think of it in terms of a board's skills matrix. So if you don't know what that is, a NomGov committee every year should be going through a skills matrix, evaluating the sitting board directors and thinking about the future strategy of the organization. Do we have the skills on the board to address and think about, again, risk and value creation for the future of where the company is going? So if you think about yourself in that context, you want to think about what your value adds are related to that. And thinking about it as a board committee, value add is also helpful. Will you be bringing value to compensation committee or the NomGov committee, or again, a technology committee or audit committee, et cetera. So for me, ESG became an area of expertise back in 2007 when the CEO of Sabre tapped me to develop and lead our enterprise-wide sustainability programs. So again, $3 billion technology company serving 60 markets. I went back to school and got a degree in sustainable management, and I had the incredible fortune of working for a company that became an industry leader. And through that experience, what I saw was that corporate boards were way behind in understanding everything on the ESG spectrum and how to use it as a framework for operational excellence. I even at the time developed an educational curriculum with my graduate school for board directors way before, NACD or Stanford or, other board programs were thinking about it. And back in 2007, sustainability was politically charged, just like it is now. So all of that shaped my perspective and what I try to share online and how it also links to culture. So I've come to love the compensation committee. Compensation philosophy tells you so much about the culture of the company, just like ESG does. Is this a culture of safety? What kind of performance is compensated? How are people measured? Circling back to women in leadership or diversity in leadership, what is your succession plan like for senior leaders and how are people being trained and promoted? So I try to address these, I'm going to call them broader ESG, its environment, its social, and its governance. Those are the big topics I try to cover in what I write and speak about.
So I think I already know the answer, but I'm gonna ask this more explicitly. So what is your thought on these sensitive topics like the geopolitical environment? And ESG, yes, is a charged topic right now. DEI is a charged topic right now. So If you're trying to go broadly and look for a new board role, do you want to be cautious about touching on those topics, or do you think that people should lean in?
Well, I say, lean in with curiosity, courage, and in a collaborative way. The tough topics have to be addressed in the boardroom in a respectful way and in a way that is material to the business. The lawyers on the call are going to love this. So, everything that a board is thinking about is this material to our business, or could it be in the future? And I think, I try to avoid politics in the boardroom, but let's not forget that, there are 6 global elections this year, which means the geopolitical landscape is something we all need to be thinking about. And a company who is not thinking about it, even if you don't do business globally, needs to be thinking about what if. An example I'll use is when I was at Sabre, we had 56% market share in Venezuela. We had a fantastic team on the ground, great customers. Tourism in Venezuela was booming. It took one regime change. And it was a matter of months, and that was all over. So the effects of the geopolitical issues, climate change is another example. People forget that the Department of Defense has been including climate change as a risk to national security since 2010. Any company who is thinking about their customers, the materials for their products, the end of life of their products, population shifts, these are geopolitical issues that have to be part of a risk profile that boards should be thinking about.
Yep. And we've got some comments in chat over here. I think people are agreeing with you. We have to address these as a board anyway. And I think if people are evaluating you as a potential candidate, they're going to want to know how you think about these things. And that could ultimately be, I think Anouk used the example where she threw me under the bus a little bit earlier and said that you had the better profile and that maybe I wasn't as interesting. And if that's, I know it was a fun example, but if that's the case and your content is spot on and the way that you approach it with curiosity is spot on and you have those stakeholders in mind in your writings and the information that you share, they're going to realize that that's the kind of leader you would be in the boardroom. And so that's what's going to open that door to have you invited in for an interview at least. So, okay, we're going to open the floor pretty quickly here to just a couple of questions from the audience. We're running a little bit long, but let's close things out here, Leilani, with maybe some lessons learned. So let's give everyone 2 or 3 things that they can walk away with today to help their online presence, in your opinion.
So I would say, think about your story, what you want people to say about you in that room, and recognize that your story evolves. So the best advice that I got, and I will share with the generosity with which it was given to me, is when you have to go back to people who worked with you in previous lives and renew your story for them. You don't want them to remember the 10 years ago you want them to know what you're up to now. So, your story evolves, thank goodness, and let it evolve with other people. And then, have an opinion. No one wants, we used to call it milquetoast, but people want to know what your opinion is. Again, hopefully it's not an alienating opinion, but have an opinion on these topics. And then, the sooner you can point out your unique value adds and demonstrate why they matter, the better.
And remember, your unique value adds, this is what we talk about as the unique value proposition. We've talked about this a couple of times in these sessions. It'll be the things that you put at the very top of your resume. It's what sits right underneath your name on your LinkedIn profile. And these are the 2 topics that Anouk is telling us we need to kind of lean in on in order to have opinions in the content that we publish. This is what's going to get you attention by those nom and gov chairs and by those search firms. So thank you for your thoughts there, Leilani. So let's finish with just a couple of questions, and I'm going to go back to Anouk and ask you to reiterate some of the things you said earlier. We had some people in chat talking about, I've got a lot of stuff that I have in my LinkedIn profile. Some of them are volunteer and charitable board work. Some is corporate board work. How do you balance those in a LinkedIn profile?
Yeah. Well, I think the volunteer should go to the volunteer section, and let's say the paid for board seats, add them to your job experience. But also remember that you don't have to put everything there. So if you say, okay, there's a lot of different things and it's like small jobs or a small board, maybe leave it out. Again, for that idea not to give the impression like, okay, she's doing so many different things, she has no capacity to do anything else. So make sure, your LinkedIn is yours. So you decide what you put up there. And if you don't want to be complete, I don't think you have to. It's not about not being honest. It's just about making, again, helping the people on the other side of the room understand what it is that you bring to the table.
And Anouk, how would you navigate or have people navigate the difference between what you might have in a board resume and a corporate resume versus what you have in your LinkedIn profile? So they don't have to be identical, but how do you make sure that you don't look like you're being incomplete or hiding the ball, if you will, when one group of information is online and other content is not? What advice would you have?
I think for your online presence, or let's say your LinkedIn, talk about the things that are relevant for today and tomorrow. And your resume, that could be, let's say, complete. So that could be the whole story. But I think use your LinkedIn, because we know that nobody has a lot of time. So even the search professionals, if you send a board resume or a resume that has 6 pages, you're going to end up at the bottom of the pile if they ever get to you.
Right.
So also there, make sure it's like, say, no more than 2 pages. But again, on your LinkedIn, use the highlights or share the highlights that are most relevant. And not everything we've done is relevant. So be critical there and look at, okay, is this going to add something to my story? No, well, then maybe just leave it out.
Understood. And Leilani, one more for you. How frequently do you post? And what advice would you have for our audience on how often you should be out there with new content?
I mean, I don't have a schedule, but because I read a lot, I'll see things that are interesting and worth sharing probably once a week. But how often I actually write a blog is not that often. I have to really think about it. It's a big story, something I want to think about that's relevant. So that may be like once a quarter, but I'm about once a week, I'll comment on something on LinkedIn.
Gotcha. And those are the lead-ins that we were talking about earlier.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Anouk, Leilani, for sharing your thoughts today and for your many helpful suggestions for our audience. Anouk, you crafted a special offer for today's attendees. Jennifer, if you can pull up that slide, tell us a little bit about what you're offering here.
Yeah, so in case you have any additional questions or think, hey, I'd like to discuss my personal situation or see how we can work together maybe on supporting you with your brand or your online presence, I'm offering everybody a free 20-minute session. So you can reach out to me via my LinkedIn via my email address or my Calendly link and schedule a 20 minutes so we can have an offline conversation, let's say, going forward, whether it's about brand or content or your online presence. More than happy to do that.
Super. Thank you, Anouk. And for those of you interested in exploring the possibility of working with a board readiness coach to help you navigate your pathway to the boardroom, I would welcome an opportunity to speak with you. Jennifer's going to share these slides. So all of this contact information and all of these links will be available to you. It should come to you in the next day or so. Certainly reach out. I'd be happy to have a 30-minute discovery call with you as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Jennifer. She's going to talk about some upcoming programs.
Great. Thank you. I just put a link in the chat to our programs page. So if you enjoyed today's program, it is part of a series called Crafting Your Board Journey. We hope you will come back in August when we follow up with your network efforts. So again, we are very grateful to Suzanne, who's played a big part in creating this series, and we're excited for our next big one on networking. Later on in October, we'll be talking about the board interview, and I will release the date and registration for that in the near future. We also have a program in July, which I don't have the date quite yet, but it will be near the end of July. This is in our Understanding Board Opportunities series, where we look at private, mature companies and family-owned businesses. And as you can see, this other series, we're looking at all different types of boards, hearing from people who have experience and can tell us more and answer more questions. So we hope to have some of you back for those programs as well. I will stop sharing, and as has been mentioned, we will share the link to the recording and the slides as well. And thank you all so very much. What a fabulous presentation and our great audience. It's so exciting to see so many of you here. Have a good evening, everyone.